Welcome to Nugget 170 with Steve Groman, and we are continuing with our right, wrong, good, bad, compare, contrast series. When you were reading that part about how they were talking about the textbooks have changed and what you might have learned isn't correct, that reminded me of the young man when you were doing a public school presentation in Plymouth, Massachusetts many years ago. And I'm sure that the young man, student that I'm thinking of right now is probably a dad by now or maybe even a professor. And he had a life-changing moment that day. The philosophy teacher was the one who invited you and had his class come in. And the biology teacher brought several of his students. There's only a handful of kids, and they were definitely not with you. Here we are in Plymouth, Massachusetts, right near Boston. And I remember you brought up punctuated equilibrium.
Right, because I like to always have question and answer time. And I remember there was a young fellow talking about the evidence for evolution. We were discussing why I say there is no evidence for evolution going on, because if everything has evolved over hundreds of millions of years, we should see that still taking place. His thing is that the examples aren't there because it is such a slow process, you can't see it. It's imperceivable because it's such a long, slow, millions of years time frame for anything to change. I had mentioned that to him. He didn't understand my explanation.
He went on this whole dissertation about, of course you can't see evolution. There can't be any evidence because it took so long.
It takes millions of years for anything to show any
quite
change.
Quite frankly, he was the only one in the group that could care less and was interested and motivated. The others were there just probably to get extra credit, but he was very empowered by what he thought he knew.
And that question, that statement, that issue comes up from time to time, even still today. But one side note on that issue is they say that it's such a slow, long, steady process that you can't observe the changes. And that, okay, fine, let's grant that for a moment. It's not true, but let's grant that for a moment. If evolution's been taking place for hundreds of millions of years, we should be in the beginning, in the middle, and the ending of all kinds of things evolving into something else. So we should see tons of examples of things turning into something else. I went on to explain to him that that is not necessarily the way that most scientists look at things today. They came up with this idea of punctuated equilibrium, which basically says there is no steady gradual change in the evidence, in the fossil record, in any evidence out there. So it must not have taken place. It just happened quickly. It just happened so rapidly that it didn't leave any evidence. But either example has no evidence on their side, but punctuated equilibrium is at the time, the new modern way of looking at things where they just said, no, it happened so fast, it didn't leave any evidence. It
right,
just happened
because that was
quickly.
about 18 years ago.
It's been a long time ago, yes.
But the problem
was this guy, he said, what are you talking about? He didn't even understand what I was saying.
Yeah, he'd never even heard of punctuated
Right,
equilibrium.
he didn't even have a clue.
And we're like, Stephen Jay Gould.
Yeah, right. We're talking
right here in Boston.
Yeah, Stephen Jay Gould right at Harvard.
Here, one of the major evolutionary scientists is in his own backyard, and he doesn't know it. But this was the corker.
The clincher
of this.
The student did not understand. Thought I was making stuff up. He did not understand what I was even trying to say.
But then his biology teacher spoke up. He said, well, actually, Ryan, I'll call him Ryan, Mr. Groman is right. We use older textbooks here in this school district. We do not have the updated books that talk about punctuated equilibrium. And that poor young man's face fell because he realized...
His worldview was crushed.
He realized that he had been building up his life and his reputation and his whole worldview on something that was from a dated textbook. And our point is, which textbook is right? Is it the gradual evolution? Is it the punctuated equilibrium?
Well, what's interesting about that, his worldview is crushed by the guy who's been giving him the information that's been wrong.
Right.
And he's the same guy said, well, that's not right. I've been wrong.
And here this teacher had been using an old book, teaching the students out of the book, knowing full well that there had been a more current idea on evolution just in their own backyard, and he wasn't presenting it. Yet these students were building their worldview, and their mind were being polluted with that information. It was horrible, but good in many senses, many regards. And I hope that student, I know he's never the same. I just hope that he realized not to trust evolution.
Don't trust everything you hear. Don't trust everything you learn, for sure. But I want to encourage parents here and people, if you have questions, that we're bringing these up because we have just countless numbers of examples that we personally have been involved with. And we're not just saying things just to say things. And we've been involved in this for 28 years in a full-time way. And we have just countless numbers of examples. If something's confusing to somebody, or call, text, email, whatever, we will be glad to interact with you and your children and your grandchildren. It just matters.
The Creation Seminar series is
That's right.
invaluable
Absolutely.
to families. We don't just put that up and say this should be part of every God-honoring home. We mean it.
Right.
The information is important, and we need to invest in our children. It's not that much to save years and years of devastation that could happen from what could happen to them.
And we've seen years and years of devastation, but we've also seen the flip side. We've seen the realization that everything somebody learned has been wrong and that there is a God and He is who He says He is. And we've seen the good and the bad.
Arm yourselves with good information.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you. We hope you are enjoying our Compare, Contrast, Good, Evil, Truth, Lies series. We will be continuing in the next Nuggets dissecting some of the featured articles in the Discover and the Science News magazine. And if you appreciate these nuggets, please share them with your friends and family and post them on your own social media sites. We appreciate those of you who can support this ministry by prayers and by offerings. Thank you.